Hello, men. Hello, Mgtows. Let's get to the page here. Let's see where I'm at. There we go. There we go. Let's get to the page here. Let's see where I'm at. Sounds good. Everything sounds good. Hello, Steve. Hello, Mr. You. Hello, men. Today's question is men's rights extinct? Is it dead? Did men's rights die a long time ago? I have to ask myself that because I've been watching men's rights for a long time now, and I've been watching the failures of men for a long time to get any rights. Men's rights, two words, men and rights. What are we doing? We're fighting for rights and men's rights. Is it extinct? Has it gone the way of the dodo bird? The dodo bird wasn't I think you've seen that picture. I put it up. Well, men's rights. Wow, that's quite a big question. I was going to read from The Politics of Masculinity by Messner today. 1985, Richard Doyle sums up father's rights and father's angers, and in a paragraph. Divorce courts are frequently like slaughterhouses, which about as much compassion and talent. They function as collective agencies for lawyer fees. However, outrageousness and stealing children and extorting money from men, it was blatantly unconstitutional. Men are regarded as mere guests in their own home, evictable anytime. Divorce courts are really just eviction courts, and we ought to think about that. Evictable at any time with the whims of the wives and the judges. Men are driven from their homes and their children's against their will, and when I am unable to stretch the paycheck far enough to support two households, are termed runaway fathers. Contrary to all principles of justice, men are thrown in prison for inability to pay alimony and support, however unreasonable and unfair. They're called obligations. Obligations. That was from 1985. I look back at 1985. I had to live through it. And I asked myself, father's rights, a discourse, the attempt which was successful, co-opted by liberal feminists and rhetorics and genders and equality and rights and forged. But what father's rights discourse rarely included was the decision of fathers' responsibility to their children before divorces. This comes from Merkin and Siddell in 1990 and 1998, and families included young men that were more for care, and they still should be taken to task as belonging to their primary wives. And despite the cultural imaginations of the father, the new father, there was a modest increase in paternal involvement by men. The vast majority of children, especially infants, were still cared for by women. Coltrane in 96. Hochschild in 98 and La Rosa in 99. Why men were stated desire to participate in parenting so rarely translated into a substantial increase in involvement. Lynn Siegel, 1990. Arguments of today, which is 1992. In this book, incorrectly, the fear of increasing parental involvement, which translates to the loss of power over their woman and losses of competitive edges in the workplace. When I read things like this, this is from 1985. Divorce courts are frequently like slaughterhouses for men, in which has about as much compassion and talent as the functions as collected agencies of lawyer fees and outrageousness of stealing children, extorting money and from men, and blatantly unconstitutionality. It's blatantly unconstitutional. This was 35 years ago. I remember 35 years ago when I first started, I first heard my first Angry Harry. He was on the BBC back then, and I listened intently. It was at a party. It was about 11 o'clock at night. The BBC had gave an Angry Harry a half hour. They yelled and dissented and argued with him for about 25 minutes of that, and he got to speak for about 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, he made me into a men's rights activist. He said words that I've never heard come out of anybody's mouth before. It was revelational. It was revelation. It was music to my ears. He was talking about fathers and fathers' rights. He was talking about the disposable father. He was talking about duties of fathers. He was talking about divorce courts. He was talking about slavery. Has fathers' rights changed since then? It's changed a lot. There are more men's rights. It's father's rights. And like I said, don't call me a father. A father is a made-up word to put a label on me. I look at the dodo bird, and I look at the ways that the dodo bird wasn't a dumb bird. It was just easy prey for hunters, and that's why the dodo bird. And I feel sometimes that's how men's rights were. What men's rights were just easy prey. We didn't do what we were supposed to do in men's rights. We were always trying to participate with I'll put that little picture up again so you can see it. We were always trying to participate. There's infinity screen. Oops, I lost it. No, nope, I did not. Where was it? Right there. We were always trying to participate with the feminists. We were like the dodo bird that went extinct. And then somehow we ended up in some fantasy fiction book, like right here, an Alice in Wonderland getting towed down the rabbit hole. And then the rabbit hole, that we started saying, man, I feel like we have gone down a rabbit hole and it's deep down. And we started talking about Mgtow back then. And what if we lose? What if 35 years goes by and 35 years has gone by and nothing has happened and men's rights goes extinct? I don't know what to I don't know how to perceive this. It seems like my whole lifetime I've been doing this ever since that first day I heard Angry Harry on the radio there. Father's rights, men's labor movement. It was called the men's labor movement back then. It's been a long time. There's a lot of things. I put up a video the other day and I just tagged it men's rights and I looked up and it stayed at the top of the it stayed at the top two of the men's rights today on YouTube, and nobody else made a video in 2 days, men's rights. And I started thinking, is men's rights dead? I haven't heard nothing for months and months and maybe even a year from anybody. Warren Farrell, Paul Elam. It seems like everything's gone away. It seems there used to be bright new talents in men's rights, but all you hear is men's Mgtow anymore. And it's probably a wiser choice. After 35 years of arguing, 40 years have gone by, 50, 60 years have gone by. Most men have come and gone since then. The heroes of those days are gone. They're all dead. Some of them hung themselves. Some of them died. Some of them just went away. It was a useless battle, and that's what it was. We come to the Mgtow thing, and oh, that was quite an explosion. We come to the Mgtow thing, and we asked ourselves, did we make the right decision becoming Mgtows? Most of us moved over and somewhere around 2004 and started working on Mgtow and decided that that was the way to go. And that was the way to go because uselessness of fighting against a system that just wanted slavery, that uselessness of fighting against gynocentrism, there was uselessness, and there was just rhetorical demise in that, and nothing really happened. And I have stacks and stacks of books like this, The Politics of Masculinity, sitting around the house trying to learn on it. Men's rights activists. Was there ever such a thing as a men's rights activist? Men getting spit at outside of courthouses from, it seemed like a useless thing to do. We were never invited to speak in front of Congress, although there is a section of men and boys there that, like, I laugh at, that comes under the heading of female affairs. But that's gynocentrism, and that's what I talked about. Everything in male will be filtered down through the female, and your entire existence will be filtered down through the female, from divorce rights to what you do, where you go, to being at work. Everything in this world will be filtered down so females can have babies, and that's will be it. And you become the disposable male in that. And them words and these things didn't come around till the late 2000s, where a new word list had popped up, and disposability and gynocentrism and hypergamy were on the rise. It was words that were descriptive of things. Hypergamy, the female's propensity to move up through divorce, gynocentrism, the act of other men, white knights and beggars, and cackling hyenas and simps, the propensity to err on the side of the female, even though they know it's wrong. They want to hear it from the mother's ear. They can't get off the tit, not for a minute, not even to support something as fine as men's rights. I think we should have a funeral this year, and we should buy a piece of land and put a cross on it, and put a stone that says, "Here lies men's rights." 40 years later, we're still slaves. 40 years later, we're still slaves. Nothing got done. And that's the hardest part. A whole lifetime talking about this, a whole lifetime doing these things. And I feel like it's wasted, because when I look at this book, I see everything that he said has come true. I see masculinity has become effemination. I see PUAs acting like girls and dressing like manginas. I see young boys that would rather be girls because they know it was easier. I see transsexuals wanting to be women. I see masculinity dying off a little at a time. Men are getting smallish, effeminated, and they'd rather be. And if this trend goes 1,000 years, pretty soon we'll be this big, and you'll be able to insert it back into the female, and men will get truly what they want. Yes, truly, they will get back to their original birth weight, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Just insert it back up there. We will become eggs. I was looking at the other day, the eggings that have been going on, and the milkshakings that have been going on, how synonymous the eggings were with my thoughts about men's rights. Masculinity is true, and it died somewhere around 1985, when the first men uttered out the words, "We're pregnant," because we will never be pregnant. She's pregnant, and it's her babies 100%, and her responsibilities 100%. All we are is slaves to it and donors. If they want us to be more, they should ask us. Voluntary fatherhood would be a good thing if it was truly voluntary and it wasn't forced. No fathers want to be forced fathers. It doesn't feel good to be a forced father, and it doesn't feel good to be a slave. It doesn't feel good to be inside of a system that doesn't respect you or want you anymore. It doesn't feel good to be inside of a system that's hostile towards you. It doesn't feel good to be inside of a system that violates the constitutional rights of every man blatantly every day, every single day, and then denies it. I was looking at the right to petition government for redress or grievance is the right to regress your grievance, to complaint or to seek assistance by one's government. That's what men's rights have been doing without fear of punishment, without fear of reprisals. That's almost a joke when you talk about it. Men's rights. It's almost a joke anymore. The right to petition your government, to redress the grievances, the rights which men should have fluently and naturally from the Constitution, without punishment, without reprisal, to ensure the First Amendment of the United States be upheld. The right to regress their grievances about 40 years later, 40 years later, after a Mesopoic era where men, Christians, rose up and said, no, we will not do this no more. And then the Million Man March, and then men's rights, the movement, and then Mgtow, the movement. All these things come and they go. 40 years. I can't hardly believe my eyes sometimes that I'm an old man with a gray beard that's been doing this so long. He just wishes it was over. I said to myself at one point, I said, I'll do this now and I'll fight this fight so my son doesn't have to fight this fight. So my son wouldn't have to do this. But 40 years later, we are still just slaves to a system of blatant unconstitutionality, which never once has one single grievance been regressed by a government that promised us in the First Amendment that it would be. I looked around and I thought, geez, men's rights has gone the way of the dodo bird. Fathers no longer exist. There's no such thing as a father, and don't bother calling me that. You might as well call me slave, and I'll call you master, because that's what I felt like when it came to my turn to get a divorce, when it came to my turn to be exiled from community, to work 2 jobs, to eat ramen noodles for nothing would come of that. Is men's rights dead? I hope so. I hope so. And I think we should have a burial for it. But with that, we ask ourselves a question now. Where do we go from here? Do we just continue walking away like we have? It's apathy when we walk away. I thought I could fix something. I thought I could make a difference in this world, only to meet apathy 40 years later. Wasn't even that. The first day I took on as being a Mgtow, I would be so apathetic about what I have seen that I said, my God, it's much easier, it's much better just to walk away. It accomplishes more. It gets more done. It's like arguing with a female. You'll never win that argument. You might as well walk away and go to the bar. She'll stand there alone, yelling and screaming into the middle distance, into the air, getting no reply back. And that's what we do. We don't argue anymore. We just walk away. I'm going fishing. We should have a big sign on our chest that says, gone fishing. Call me when you stop yelling. You can yell out into the ether, into the air all you want. It's not going to change the fact that you're a woman. Never will change the fact that you're a woman. You know, change the fact that they're a woman, accountability and agency. And I've known very few women in my life that had that responsibility, accountability, and agency. Nobody in this lifetime gets a slave, but as long as fathers' rights are dead, women all over America and Western society and basic Eastern society too, they'll get a slave as long as men's rights is dead, and men just walk away, say, "Nah, I'm just gonna not participate as long as the white knights and the simps and the cackling hyenas and the beggars, they won the day." I don't know how they won the day. Persistence, tenacity, just plain stupidity. Like they say, you can't fight stupid. Don't try to fight stupid. Stupid always wins. They drag you down to their level and they beat you with experience. Stupid always wins. Over the last 40 years, nothing got done. We had the backlash from the anti-feminist movement. We had Me Too. We have a lot of things going on, which is moving into the workplaces. I don't know what they call the next movement, but it's on its way. And like always, nothing will ever be good enough. It will keep going and it will keep going and it will keep going. And all a man can really do is just walk away from it and go, you keep yelling, screaming out to the ether, and the simps will keep giving you what they want until their very existence is diminished, until their size is diminished down to 7 pounds, 6 ounces, and they can shove you right back up into the place that they always wanted to be to begin with. When I look at the talk of masculinity in 1985, I thought something would get done, and then now I look at 2016 and I see the effeminated male. I see the millennial and the Zer, and I look at him and go, wow, we are most certainly losing. We lost that war a long time ago. Masculinity certainly is dead, and it is easier to be a female, much easier. I wonder what it would have took. I wonder if I could have gone back to 1985, what I would have said, what I would say to them. I would say, would I say it's useless? It's useless to fight with those courts. It's useless because there's something called gynocentrism. And they would go, what? And I'd say, yeah, every guy in that court, he'll have the propensity to argue on the behalf of the female. He will have the propensity to err on the behalf of the female. And you can't fight that. Would I tell him that? Could I explain to them that the path they were going down was a useless, futile path? I think about that a lot. A time machine, or I can send a message back and go, don't do it, dude. Don't do it, Charlie Brown. She's just going to pull the ball out from you like she always does. Is father's rights dead? Is there any more discourse? Will there ever be a time where we'll have real discourse and real discussions where men's rights will be considered as a real issue? I don't think so. I don't think so. Our shame is that we will get to pass that down to future generations, and they'll say, well, it was that other generation's fault, because that's what always happens. I talked about this before 1854 when when Thoreau was walking out of the woods in Walden, and he talked about the litter on off the railroad tracks and what the other generation. He was with this woman, I can't remember her name. She was collecting up pop bottles or something in the woods, and he was talking about how the flora was dying and how it was ugly. And he says, yeah, every generation blames it on the generation before them. It's the easiest thing to do when every generation is just destined to be a failure in their own rights. And that was 1854, and nothing has changed. That's right. Damn you, Lucy. And men keep falling for that whiskey. Men keep falling for that. It's just easier to go fishing, go to the bar, not have to deal with it, not think about it. I almost long for the days before I thought about my first men's rights experience, before Angry Harry turned my brain to mush and lit it on fire years and years ago with what he was saying. I almost wish that someone would insert me back into the matrix, all my bones in the wound, so I would have never heard a single thing I heard over the years. Because, man, it has gotten rough, and it gets rougher around here every day. I think we're going backwards. I think we're losing. And I think an active approach is necessary. But I don't think that's going to happen. Should we have a burial for men's rights? Yeah, I think we should. I think we should mourn its loss, too. Uh, was it the last attempt men will ever make at getting rights in society, equal rights under the constitutions? I don't know. I don't know. New fatherhood, what will that entail? What would that entail? I've talking to young men around, and some of them even have taken on the positions of being house father. House father. What is a house father? He sits around and he takes care of the kids. He does the female chores and the female duties, washing. He vacuums the floor and stuff like that. Seems like a pretty good job. Yes, house father. That's what it will come to. That was the female cure for masculinity. All it talks of is monetary things and apathy and giving up, and the eventual will be an eventual divorce when she meets another alpha at work. And I've seen that several times with the new house fathers that thought that would be the way. The get discourse that it will take to change this thing will never happen, because we have gynocentrism, and you will simply be arguing with other uber munches, other other supermen, and then the supermen will fight eventually, and then they will become slave to the fight, and that's what happens. I think Nietzsche talked about it, and Camus talked about it, and Kant talked about it, and they all talked about it. Uh, we become slaves to this thing, and there's now going to be no there'll be no regressing our grievances. And I think that's pretty clear after 40 years of this thing, doing this thing. There will be no regressing our grievances. And what's that saying? Is they're just not going to listen. They like it the way it is. The government likes making trillions of dollars off of men that refuse to speak up for themselves. The divorce court industry is $1 trillion business, and it builds big buildings for them, and the establishment can sit in those offices and pretend like they're authoritarians, and hold you accountable for what they believe is a transgression against God. All the while, we just go, what, really? Christianity soaked his way into our government a long time ago, when we were supposed to have a state that was free from religion, but somehow they pulled that one off on us. There's not much left of a constitution. The last thing they'll take away are right to own guns, and then everybody will truly be slaves to oligarchs and tyrants. And I don't know what'll happen then, but we could have done a little better, as all of our rights was exiting. Men's rights was an important thing to have around. It was the last battle, I think. Now you have homosexuality and lesbianism, and they have more rights than you as a man. You have femininity, movements of femininity, feminism. They have more rights than you as a man. The only thing you can offer is your stern back and your strong arms, and to go to work, and then have two households, because that's what you will need to have to put a roof over your head. And most of us know the horrors of macaroni and cheese dinners and Kraft dinners and ramen noodle dinners while you're struggling through this thing, and it just never seems fair. Why a government that has a health and human service department takes 1/3 of your pay, and then 1/3 of your other side of your pay gets taken, and you get to live on 1/3 of your pay. So they get 2/3, you get one, and the first 1/3 was supposed to take care of the second 1/3, and it all becomes absurdity and hypocrisy after that. And they never seem to realize that that's what that was for: men's altruism, paying taxes so you can take care of the females, so you can build those buildings, and we'll help build those buildings. We'll use our strong backs and our strong arms to do that, and we'll pay 1/3 of our taxes. And that was the agreement. And then they wanted more. They wanted state taxes, and then they wanted county taxes, and they want home taxes, and they want food taxes on top of the home taxes, which they promised you if you paid home taxes, you wouldn't pay food taxes. But they whittle away at that, and they stick that on the back end, and then the corporate owners stick that onto you, and then you get to pay twice. We talked about this in 1791. It was taxation without representation, and now you pay three. And if you ever get a divorce, you'll know the pain of paying that tax to a system that was supposed to take care of the females, that decided that they would use the money on other things like buildings for themselves and flights to Barbados to have meetings that never existed, so they can jet set her off around the world and pretend that they're authoritarian figures and pretend that they're bigger than mere men. They're glad to spend all your money at war, and they'll be glad to send your children to war while they're sit at home. We look at the absurdity of this system, and no one has ever called them to task on doing what was supposed to be done with that money. Take care of the females, build the building so you can house them. Then you can tear down all of the family courts, do away with marriage, and do away with those laws, because you don't need them, because we already prepay those taxes. We're already pre-cucked by the first 30%. And those were the issues of men's rights. But somewhere along the line, it just became absurdity and chaos. And we said, freak it, I'll walk away, because no one's listening and they like spending my money. And why wouldn't they like spending your money? If I could get my hands on 1 billion of that, I would spend it too. And I wish I could have. Then I wouldn't have to think about this existence every single day. And I'm almost ashamed at this point. I have the white neck beard now. I remember my first girlfriend telling me, yeah, someday you'll have the white neck beard too. And now I look in the mirror and I see the man with the white neck beard, the symbol of the second sexual sex characteristic is a beard, the symbol of masculinity. But I see well-shaven boys with duct taping themselves up and tearing the fur off of them so they can look like girls. Masculinity truly is dead. We started that movement 40 years ago with no avail. And some days I think about this and a little tear dribbles down my my masculine face. I feel like that Indian on that commercial back in the day that looks out all over this trash and a little tear dribbles down his face, knowing nothing had come of it. As we kill our environment, that's what I feel like. I feel like all is lost, and Mgtow has become a movement of apathy. I'll just walk away because there's nothing that can be done. And I know that to be true. And that's the sad part. I do know that to be true. Is men's rights extinct like the dodo bird? Like the dodo bird in Alice in Wonderland. He went down the rabbit hole, never to be seen again. Yes, I think it is. Can it be resurrected in the hearts of men in Mgtow? I sure hope so. I sure hope so, because this thing ain't getting better. Pretty soon, boys will be born into slavery. And from day one, they'll just start paying. From day one, they'll be heaving those barrels and cases of Pepsi and oil. And they won't even ask anymore what freedom feels like, because that will feel like freedom to them, because they get to go home at night and have a hot dinner. I think Mgtow in the most it incenses the feeling of freedom in men and the desire for freedom. Like Barbarossa would say, that desire is the only thing in the whole world that can compete with the desire for mating, the desire for freedom. It's funny how the system has figured out how to turn that against us. Is men's rights dead? Should we have a funeral? Yeah. And we should all just cry a little tear for that, because we lost again 40 years of men's rights, and we're back to where we started. As a matter of fact, I think we lost a few percentage points here. It's not hard to look around yourself today in this day to ask yourself, is masculinity truly dead? Is it easier to be a female than it is a male? Has the workplace been overrun? Are boys just a little more effeminate? Are they a little more skittish? Are they a little more afraid to be men? Yeah. We asked ourselves that question years and years and years ago. The politics of masculinity. If you get a chance to read through it, it's a short read. You can do it in a day. Every other sentence, you will go, oh God, that's today. Oh God, that happened. Oh God, we lost on that one. Oh God, it doesn't even seem real that he wrote that. It never fixed a thing, but it showed a great ability to prognosticate a future against what they were seeing at that time. Can we in Mgtow prognosticate our futures for our sons, or for the men that will be born in the future? Most of us have said that we're just neonatalists now, and we even refuse to have children or go that route. But for the men that are going to do that, can we prognosticate their future? Are we writing books and saying this is what's going to happen? Men will become like the jacana. If you don't know what the jacana is a bird that sits on the nest. For the female is dimorphically bigger. The female jacana bird comes around and it looks for a mating male that it has sitting on, and it comes up and it kicks that male's ass. Then it smashes the egg of the other female, and then the male flies off with it. the bird has another egg, and the male is tasked with sitting on that egg. I think that's the future of masculinity. That's the future of the male. If we, Mgtow, don't take a strong stance against these things. And I think we do in our language, in our looks, in our faces, in our grimaces. I think we males now do. I think we have to turn up the heat in the kitchen. I think we have to make it so hot that they'll have to talk to us. I think that's what the abortion thing is about, so they can have more white babies or have more babies in general, no matter how they're looking at that. They're going to force women to have babies now because men are walking away, and they need soldiers so they can spend your money, so they can make those billions from industrialized militarization. And it's simple to see if we just use the money how it was intended in altruistic ways, the way it was originally intended when men were altruistic, none of this would have came about. Most of the time with Mgtows, I hear them say, let it burn, scorched earth policies. I don't care what I leave behind. Let it all die. Let it all burn. That's where you get with apathy. It's not worth fighting for. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. That's all apathy. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to give up yet. But this white neck beard tells a lot when I look in the mirror. And I can't hardly imagine myself at this age. I remember a young, brash young man that wanted to fight the world in 1985. I look back at 35 years of men's rights and ask myself, I have to ask myself the question, did anything change? Did anything change? For me, nothing changed in what I see with modern male masculinity, if you want to call it that. I can't remember that word, but we first started using back in about 1986 when men started dressing a little more effeminate. It sums up mangina, but it wasn't that. It was some other word. I can't remember it. But if that hasn't become the symbol of masculinity nowadays, I was just, oh my God. So I think we should have a funeral for men's rights, or we could do something about it. I've always been a do something about it sort of guy. It's hard to shut me up sometimes, and uh, that's just the kind of man that I am. But unless somebody says something, if it's easier just to be apathetic about these things, then we have truly lost as men's father's rights is dead. And the next movement, can't wait to see that. I'll be sitting back on the old man Mgtow bench, just giggling and laughing, just joking about it, point and laugh and point and laugh. You have to find the humor in it, they say. I don't find it too humorful some days. For men that can build skyscrapers that reach the top of the sky and go out into space, I don't find that a funny proposition. For men that can do those things, I don't find it a funny proposition. I find it disturbing. But right now, as it is, we have Mgtow, and Mgtow seems to be a pretty strong movement that's moving forward. We'll see what the next one comes and where our next Neo will come from. Maybe that Beowulf will pop out of the onto the scene again and slay the dragon. I don't know. It gives us a little bit of hope, and we make up stories. Where will the next Neo come from? That one. Seems like Barbarossa is gone, and whatever we were doing back in 2008 doesn't seem to be anything like what we're doing now. Are we destined to recreate what we already recreated again? To start mimicking and a different author will write it slightly different. He'll write a book like this, slightly different, about masculinity, and some men will catch in fire and then it will die. It seems to be a reciprocatory thing. It just dies out at the end. There's been if you read this book, Politics of Masculinity, you'll see how many men's rights movements there really were. And not to call it a movement is just ridiculous, because that's how it will be remembered in history. But today it's apathy and effemination. And still, not a single feminist that I have ever met has taken responsibility for her own body. That, by the way, men can't have children, and it's not our children, it's yours. And it's your agency, and it's your child 100%. If anything, over the years, I've learned that lesson. And if that is true, then it's yours, all yours. The ball is yours 100%, including responsibility and accountability. That's where the absurd part is, because accountable people and responsible people don't need slaves. They don't need someone taking care of them. But that's what they get every day. Every time I hear the strong woman mantra being echoed in modern culture, I just giggle a little. Yeah, right. Strong people don't need slaves. But male discord and men's rights will keep going, and we'll keep complaining, never really doing anything about it, never really forcing it to Congress, never really having our grievances redressed in front of our government that promised that's what they would do. They would give us name tags and titles like they did to Warren Farrell, Men and Boys, Council for Men and Boys. That's a nice title. It's just a name tag like SpongeBob had, and he lost his name tag and ran around in that and thought he lost his identity, because that will become your identity, your name tag, your label. But it paid a little better, and you sold out. And nothing will get done again, and it will just go back to another period that goes round and round. I won't be around then. I'm sure of that. But hopefully we'll learn from this thing, and we'll learn what not to do. We'll learn how to do things right. And with everything, it'll probably end with force. That's the male way. Who's the strongest? Force is always the winner. And it didn't have to be that way because we had laws that said our grievances would have to be redressed. But it doesn't seem likely that that will happen. Might as well rip up that Constitution and start all over again. And that's what many people are saying nowadays. I'm sick of paying for everything, and I'm sick of holding the world on my back. I've gotten old. My knees hurt. And most of the time, I just sleep. Because, like I said, I'm the happiest when I sleep because I don't have to look at none of this stuff. I don't have to look at the absurdity anymore. And that's about it, man. That's all I have to say. I've been mumbling on for a little bit of time, and I'm sorry to bend your ears, and I'm sorry to bring such bad news. Can we do something about it? I think so. Should we get mad? Yes. Will this make you mad? Yes. Don't kill the messenger. Turn your anger like an arrow on society and shoot your arrow at something and try to target in. Like I said, we don't know everything. You just try to get as close as you can. And that's what the great Sir Oliver Wendell Holmes would say. But if we do nothing, that's what you'll get. You get the leaders that you will get the leader that you want, and you will get what you want if you do nothing, and nothing gets nothing. Apathy just gets shame. So, man, keep up the fight. That's all we can do. Keep it going and try to resurrect the dead men's rights movement. And maybe we could put some flesh on them bones with Mgtow. Pull it out of the matrix, birth it, and bring it back. That's your job. I don't know how that's going to be done. I tried. But I think Mgtow has a better chance. And what will be the next movement? I don't know. Men will always be discontent until fathers' rights are tended to. Until the day that there are no slaves and everybody's equal, it's always going to be an issue. Until there is no oligarchs and tyrants in this world, until all men are created equal, becomes true, we will have these arguments. So it's our job to keep it going. Try to find some of those bones and pull it out of the matrix because, well, put some flesh on it. That's what you do. And I'm going to let you all go. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being Mgtow, men. Thanks a lot for being Mgtow. Mgtow.